I'm gonna find. And I'm gonna kill. Every last one of them.
Rated M for mature.
I feel so extraordinary. Something's gotta hold on. Got this feeling on emotion, a sudden sense of liberty. I used to think that the day would never come. See the light in the shade of the morning sun. My morning sun is the drug that brings me near to the childhood I lost, replaced by fear.
I wish things were different. Ellie! But they ain't.
Please stop! I'm leaving tomorrow.
To do this smart, we'd be leaving Jackson vulnerable.
So they just get to get away with this?
How'd you find us?
You can't stop this.
I want what you want. But not at any cost. I really hope you make it.
I have to finish it.
There's a cost.
We could have killed you. Maybe you should have.
Done. How would you rate our kiss from last night?
Look who decided to join us. All right. You all know the drill. Run your routes. Mark your logbooks. You run into anything you can't handle.
Ellie!
tell me. I have to finish it.
You have no idea what you're walking into.
What are you doing?
You don't know how large that group is, how armed.
I don't care. You can't stop this. What the hell are you doing here?
You think I'd let you do this on your own?
I hate these things.
Tell me about it.
Your old man really laid into me today.
What happened?
Another big lecture about my patrols. Don't go here, don't go there. It's funny how involved he gets whenever you're scheduled to go out.
Yeah.
She's putting on quite the show.
I give you guys 2 weeks until you're back together.
Not gonna happen. She, say something to you?
Make it 1 week.
Ellie! Hey! What took you so long?
Well, I'm here, aren't I?
Dina?
Jesse.
Hey, don't forget we leave at first light, so get some rest.
Yes, sir. You're such a dick. Come on. Why don't you start with me? Okay, I have a very serious question for you. How bad do I smell?
Like a hot pile of garbage?
Oh, okay. Oh, how about that?
Gross.
You love it.
Every guy in this room is staring at you right now. Maybe they're staring at you. Or not. Maybe they're jealous of you. I'm just a girl, not a threat.
Oh, Ellie. I think they should be terrified of you.
Breathe.
Holy shit! Oh, no! No,
Jesus.
Spread out.
She went into the grass. Watch yourself. Ethan.
What?
Wolf. She came through here. Damn it. Double back. Go.
I have eyes!
terrifying. They are nested with sin. Free them, that they may know my... Yara! Where is the other apostate? Clip her wings.
Yara. Demons are coming. Cut her down. She's one of them. Lev. Watch your backs.
the valley of the shadow of death, and I fear no evil because I'm blind to it all. In my mind, my gun, they comfort me, because I know I'll kill my enemies when they come. Surely goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell on this earth forevermore. Said I walk beside the still waters and they restore my soul, but I can't walk on the path of the right because I'm wrong. No, I can't walk on the path of the right, 'cause I'm wrong.
What are you doing, kiddo? You really gonna go through with this?
I'm gonna find, and I'm gonna kill every last one of them.
For The Last of Us Part 2, we're hoping to create a story that makes a commentary about the cycle of violence and how acts can beget other acts. But also now, because it's Part 2, it has to be additive. It has to take the first one into consideration, that if you played both, then you get like a bigger narrative.
The thing that Neil really cared about, that the studio really cared about, is honoring Ellie and Joel specifically, and their journey as characters. What is the honest next steps that they would take? What are the truest moves that we could see them do?
The Last of Us 2 expands on the first game, both in the relationship between Ellie and Joel, the relationships that we see Ellie having, and just the greater world that we're in, and we see more of it.
It's a genre story about this infection that turns people into these crazy monster-like humanoids. The core of it is about these really intimate, intense relationships.
At the start of the game, Ellie is 19. She is living in a safe, secure community.
We're coming in, 25 years after the outbreak. And you, as Ellie, live in Jackson, which is this kind of somewhat tranquil town in this really messed up reality.
She has real community now. She has people who love and care for her, willing to sacrifice for her. Joel is also very settled down.
He's now part of a town. He's no longer a smuggler. Actually, the town relies on this guy that is a very capable killer, and that's something these towns and this world need.
Dina, where are you?
And then Jackson and Ellie are shaken by a violent event. It really changes Ellie's day-to-day life, and now just living is no longer enough. Like, there's these people that have wronged her, and she wants retribution. And you as a player are gonna want retribution for what these people have done. And then you go off on this journey that leads you to Seattle, where now you're like stuck in the city that has these warring factions, and they're both fighting over the spoils of Seattle, and you're stuck there in the middle looking for this very specific group that has wronged you. And that's the concept of the story. And then it takes you on all sorts of twists and turns in Naughty Dog fashion. I know even within the studio, we've had a lot of philosophical arguments about some of the events and what happens in the game, and I think in this one might be more divisive than the first game in a very kind of exciting way that I think it raises those interesting philosophical questions and asks the players to interpret some of the material that's there and see where they stand on those questions. This could be infected, it could be other people, it could just be the environment, it could be rushing water, anything that could happen in this post-apocalyptic world.
Are you clean? Yeah.
But more than anything, it needs to put you in Ellie's shoes, that you're experiencing what Ellie's experiencing, making you feel what she feels. Because the more we do that, the more the emotional beats of the story work for us, and the more they work for us in this very unique way that only works in video games.
The gameplay philosophy of The Last of Us Part 2 is putting you in the shoes of Ellie and everything that that means. It means giving you a threat constantly, as this world has. It means giving you the hard choices.
Because this game takes place in such a hostile universe and our characters are pushed to do really difficult things, we want to put you in alignment with those choices. We want you to understand how hard certain decisions were for these characters, because they're hard for you.
I would say the overarching philosophy of how we approached designing the game mechanically is how can we take things to the next level.
Everything kind of comes out of the story. And how do we do it through systems? So one is you have to feel the pressure of survival. Survive by the skin of my teeth. How do I use all the scrap around me? Any kind of bullet, any kind of rag, any kind of bottle of alcohol. How do we give you that sense of being a survivor in this world? Ellie is very small compared to Joel and more nimble. How do we make you feel like you're not the strongest person in the room, but you still should be able to rise to the challenge and survive, you know, a fight with a bunch of people that are all bigger than you? So therefore it meant creating a character and systems and mechanics that allow you to be much more nimble. And that's where we added a jump button.
Deal.
In the first game we had a clamber button, but not really jumping. And here, Ellie can jump. The combat scenarios are much more vertical, where Ellie can use elevation to her advantage.
Prone is a huge, huge one. Prone, obviously, it means to lay flat on the ground. Something so simple, again, something that in real life you'd be able to do. Letting the player have access to all their weapons, all the items, crafting, everything, while in that position. And it just creates so many more emergent things in gameplay.
Now that we have this other state that the player could be in, which are very low to the ground, how else can we use this other than just hiding in vegetation? We're like, well, there's a lot of man-made things or different structures that have collapsed that allow just enough space for you to crawl under, which means that now, as enemies are looking for you, you can crawl under things and hide, and it's just one more way to assess your environment and use it to Ellie's advantage. Now, because you can hide under things, we gave the enemies, we made them smarter.
Under here.
What the gameplay needs to do is immerse you in the world, give you as many interesting actions to survive in this world and overcome obstacles. And obstacles could be infected, it could be other people, it could just be the environment, it could be rushing water, anything that could happen in this post-apocalyptic world.
Are you clean? Yeah.
But more than anything, it needs to put you in Ellie's shoes, that you're experiencing what Ellie's experiencing, making you feel what she feels. Because the more we do that, the more the emotional beats of the story work for us, and the more they work for us in this very unique way that only works in video games.
The gameplay philosophy of The Last of Us Part 2 is putting you in the shoes of Ellie and everything that that means. It means giving you a threat constantly, as this world has. It means giving you the hard choices.
Because this game takes place in such a hostile universe and our characters are pushed to do really difficult things, we want to put you in alignment with those choices. We want you to understand how hard certain decisions were for these characters, because they're hard for you.
I would say the overarching philosophy of how we approached designing the game mechanically is how can we take things to the next level.
Everything kind of comes out of the story. And how do we do it through systems? So one is you have to feel the pressure of survival. Survive by the skin of my teeth. How do I use all the scrap around me? Any kind of bullet, any kind of rag, any kind of bottle of alcohol. How do we give you that sense of being a survivor in this world? Ellie is very small compared to Joel and more nimble. How do we make you feel like you're not the strongest person in the room, but you still should be able to rise to the challenge and survive, you know, a fight with a bunch of people that are all bigger than you? So therefore it meant creating a character and systems and mechanics that allow you to be much more nimble. And that's where we added a jump button.
Deal.
In the first game we had a clamber button, but not really jumping. And here Ellie can jump. The combat scenarios are much more vertical, where Ellie can use elevation to her advantage.
Prone is a huge, huge one. Prone, obviously, it means to lay flat on the ground. Something so simple, again, something that in real life you'd be able to do. Letting the player have access to all their weapons, all the items, crafting, everything while in that position. And it just creates so many more emergent things in gameplay.
Now that we have this other state that the player could be in, which are very low to the ground, how else can we use this other than just hiding in vegetation? We're like, well, there's a lot of man-made things or different structures that have collapsed that allow just enough space for you to crawl under, and which means that now, as enemies are looking for you, you can crawl under things and hide, and it's just one more way to assess your environment and use it to Ellie's advantage. Now, because you can hide under things, we made them smarter and gave them the ability to look under things. So while you might hide somewhere and be safe for a while, eventually they're going to start looking under stuff, and if you're hiding under a truck and they spot you, they're going to yank you out and then try to kill you.
Dodging is a big one, because now with dodge, anytime you're in a scuffle, you have a chance to get away. You have a chance to counterattack. It lets escape be an option as well. Sometimes you just gotta run. And that is another part of this world, which is sometimes the threat is so overpowering that you just have to get away.
When you are partially hidden, or you're in grass, that means people from afar can't see you, but people from closer can kind of see you. They will eventually acquire you. You're not completely hidden when you're in grass.
She went into the grass. Watch yourself.
And it makes you as a player become much more aware of your surroundings.
Jump, prone, dodge, all these things feed into both exploration and combat, because it lets us expand the space. The size of spaces can be bigger, the intricacy of spaces can be more complex, and it still works exactly as you would expect.
So when it came to our level design, we really wanted to challenge ourselves to make a world that really felt like a real space as much as we possibly could, and didn't feel like a series of combat encounters and exploration spaces and then combat encounters that felt like a hall of horrors or something, but something that really felt like a space that you could explore that seemed like a legitimate urban environment. And that pushed us to make our level design even more open than it was in the first game, which for us at the time was pretty open. In this game, we've gone so far in making the level design open that there are actually entire story moments, entire combat encounters, like full scripted sequences that you may completely miss. And there are things that we feel like Even though the portion of our player base may never see these things, the fact that when you do encounter them, you feel like you discovered them, it lends them this charm and this magic that I think is unique to games, that, you know, this happened to me because of what I did and what the place I explored to.
Crafting is very much about a payoff to exploration, meaning that when you enter new spaces, you want to look around for supplies. You want to open drawers and cabinets and look for different things that will allow you to craft either items that can help you heal, items that can help you attack multiple enemies at once, such as the Molotov or the landmine that Ellie can craft. Items that can help augment your weapons, like the silencer for her pistol, or craft new kinds of ammo.
It also gives us tons of interesting gameplay choices and overlaps that you can do at any moment and on the fly. We try to be a game that wants you to make a lot of different decisions in combat as possible. And the way that we've expanded the recipe roster and all of the recipes and how they interact with each other is carefully chosen for the different ingredients and making sure that you always have these interesting decisions to make.
We put a much stronger emphasis on the importance of the choices you make in the long term for your character.
It'd be useful.
Through the weapon upgrade system, through the player upgrade system, there aren't enough resources in a single playthrough to fully upgrade your character. The choices that you make, you're going to have to live with, and we wanted to make sure that all of the choices that you made had a really noticeable and tangible effect on the way that you play. You feel a greater kinship with Ellie because you are living with decisions that you've already made. Like you are continuing this through line of her journey through this world, and the moment-to-moment gameplay is influenced by that in a way that we haven't before. The realization that your choices have these long-term consequences is very much like the nature of the narrative of the game. And I'm happy that the mechanics are supporting that.
The world of The Last of Us is dangerous. Unless you're living in a protected area, there is something lethal around every corner. Once you venture out of your home, you're in danger. And where we're taking the story and where we're taking Ellie is, like, each step of the way, she's putting herself in more and more danger to bring these people to justice.
I would say that the world, in every sense of the word, is bigger than Last of Us Part 1. Both in scale and the amount of physical space that exists for you to explore, for you to encounter other people.
Yeah, this route has its perks.
Our hope is to make every corner a challenge, make every decision hard for Ellie. And so we do that not just in the gameplay you experience, but also in the level design. So part of that is making certain experiences really hostile, be it through weather or through rivers or craggy cliffs or slick snow. But we also use it in terms of how blind the player is. Like, what can they see? How safe do you feel? Can you see a threat coming around the corner? You never know if the bullets in your gun are gonna be enough. You never know if you can stop and bandage your arm. You can never fully breathe. And we want you to be in alignment with Ellie, who can never fully breathe when she experiences this trauma.
For Jackson specifically, we wanted to make it feel like a very close-knit kind of community that's focused on family, focused on sustainable ways of living. I obviously have the hydroelectric dam generator that's powering the town, so we have, you know, electricity in Jackson, which is not something that maybe players would expect to see in the world. But given that we're further in time, we wanted to show that there are certain people dedicated in the world to rebuilding a life that doesn't revolve around killing people and scavenging.
As you walk around the town, you can hear kids laughing. You could see people going into restaurants and eating, and it's a very kind of tranquil town. Now, we know there's all these horrible things happening outside the walls, but they've been able to protect the innocence of this town.
Jackson, in many ways, represents what is at stake for our characters. A life of peace and relative comfort. A life where you can fall in love, a place where children can play and it's okay. And I think, when we were looking at building out Jackson, it's like, okay, how many of those moments can we represent? What's awesome about the world of The Last of Us is it shows just how precious the things that we take for granted in our everyday lives, how precious those things really are.
Seattle compared to Jackson is very different. It's more of a war zone, I would say.
Part of the interesting thing with Seattle or the Pacific Northwest is that there's all this rain and all this foliage and wildlife, and it's this very lush area that if someone were to settle down, it'd be a pretty good place to settle down just as far as the kind of fruit you can scavenge, the animals you can hunt. And then because it is so lush, because it is so teeming with resources, is why there are multiple factions trying to fight over those resources. One faction you run into in Seattle is the Washington Liberation Front. When the outbreak happened, the military took some pretty drastic actions and quarantined parts of the country. And this was their way of protecting the population that has survived this horrendous outbreak. And because of that, it led to rise of these resistance groups. And in the first game, we saw the Fireflies. And we heard about other groups, and in this game, we get to see, here's another group that rose called the Washington Liberation Front, that was able to defeat the army and thereby take over a lot of their equipment. And they're this very militaristic faction.
And at the same time, you have the Seraphites. And they're a religious group that also came up out of the outbreak that believed that the pandemic came because of sin. They're trying to reset the world and return it to a better place than it was.
In The Last of Us, almost any group that has survived this long has to be dangerous. If you're not dangerous, you're not going to survive. You're going to become someone's victim. And the two factions you run into are both very dangerous. The WLF has a lot of military equipment that they're able to use to defend this area, and they have large numbers, whereas the Seraphites are very quiet and stealthy and able to use the large amount of foliage to their advantage, and they fight more in this kind of guerrilla warfare.
How you deal with them is going to be different because they have different language, they have different communication style. The scars will whistle to each other with this different language. And they have some of the stuff that you have. You have a bow and arrow, they can hit you with arrows and impale you, and you have to pull the arrow out. They have big sledgehammers and melee weapons. The WLF, they have trained dogs that will sniff and attack you.
Dogs are a new level of threat that Ellie hasn't had to negotiate before, and hopefully they create a new complicated choice for the player. We saw in them an opportunity to challenge people's perceptions of what a combat setup can be. We wanted to find really hard choices. The dogs themselves have names. They're called out by their owners. We wanted every setup to be challenging.
Oh, that smell. Looks like infected did this. How many do you think it would take to bring down a moose?
Infected are still a threat in this world. We wanted to take first our basic classes that we had in the first game and say, okay, what's different about them now? So we'll have scenarios where way more runners, like we can have hordes sometimes of runners coming after you, and it might be about just escaping because the odds are just overwhelming. You know, this thing just keeps mutating. There's certain evolutions of infected that you haven't seen before, certain new classes.
There's the Shamblers, which kind of have these exploding acid clouds when you get near them.
You're running down a hallway and you have to suddenly make a decision like, oh, do I want to take the damage and go through this cloud or find some other route or go back the way I came? And it kind of forces you to, on the fly, kind of make new decisions about how you're going to deal with the threat behind you or potentially in front of you.
So again, it's about how do we make fighting against infected intelligent. So when you come on a space, you're listening to audio cues because different classes will make different sounds. If you just go in guns blazing and throw caution in the wind, you could easily get overwhelmed and regret that strategy.
That level of uncertainty and instability is something our characters have to carry with them every day as they go out into the world to protect the people they love most. And that threat is banging on their door every day.
I really hope you make it.